My friends, life is one of the greatest gifts ever given to us. Every breath you take, every sunrise you see, every moment you are alive, it is not an accident. You were created for a purpose, designed by the hand of God Himself, and yet so many people go through their days without ever asking the most important question: what am I doing with the life I've been given? Too many of us trade our days for empty things, chasing pleasure, chasing possessions, chasing recognition that will not last. We fill our lives with noise, but deep down inside we know something is missing. You see, life is short. It passes quickly, like a shadow fading at sunset, like a flower that blooms in the morning and withers by evening. The tragedy is not death itself. The real tragedy is to live all these years and never discover why you were placed here, never make a difference, never touch eternity. That, my friends, is a wasted life. Today, I want to remind you that you were made for more. You were not created just to survive, just to earn, just to exist. You were created to live with meaning, with passion, and with eternal significance. And the choices you make today, yes, the choices you make right now, will determine whether your life is wasted or whether it counts for something greater than yourself. Life is short, fragile, and passes quickly. When you stop and think about it, every single day that goes by is one more day you will never get back. The hours you spend, the moments you live, the choices you make, they are all moving you forward, and yet so many of us act as though life is permanent, as if tomorrow is guaranteed. The truth is, tomorrow is not promised to anyone. We wake up in the morning and we assume we will see the evening, but countless people never make it that far. We go to bed at night planning for tomorrow, but tomorrow is not in our hands. This should awaken us to the reality of how precious each moment is. Think about how quickly time moves. One day you are young, full of dreams and energy, and it feels as if you have all the time in the world. Then suddenly, you look back and years have slipped through your fingers like sand in an hourglass. The days that once seemed endless are now only memories, and you wonder where they went. Life is a vapor, the scripture says, here for a little while and then gone. That is not meant to frighten us, but to remind us that we cannot waste the time we have been given. The clock is ticking, and each tick is a reminder that we are moving closer to the end of our earthly journey. The fragility of life becomes clear when we consider how easily it can be taken away. A single accident, a sudden illness, an unexpected turn of events can bring everything to a halt. No one is too strong, too young, or too successful to escape the reality that life can change in a moment. We see it in the headlines, we see it in our communities, and sometimes we see it in our own families. Life is fragile, like a candle burning in the wind. It shines bright, but one strong gust can extinguish it. When we understand this, we begin to value each day not as a guarantee, but as a gift. And yet, despite knowing all this, many people live as though they have an endless supply of time. They put off important decisions, they postpone meaningful relationships, they delay pursuing the things that matter most, thinking they can always do it later. But later is not always promised. People waste years chasing things that will not last, only to discover too late that they spent their time on what had no eternal value. The fragility of life should drive us not to fear, but to urgency. We must learn to live each day with intentionality, knowing that the sands of time are running quickly. When you look at history, when you look at your own life, you see the truth of how swiftly it all passes. Childhood fades into adulthood, adulthood into old age, and old age into eternity. In just a blink, generations rise and fall. Nations change, cultures shift, empires come and go, but life itself remains brief. It has always been this way, and it always will be. That is why we are urged to number our days, to count them carefully, so that we may live wisely, not carelessly. The brevity of life is not meant to discourage, but to awaken us. It should cause us to see time as the most valuable resource we have, more precious than gold, more lasting than possessions, more significant than success. Wealth can be regained, possessions can be replaced, opportunities can appear again, but once time is gone, it can never be recovered. Every wasted moment is a piece of life you cannot take back. This is why the wise live with urgency, not wasting what cannot be restored. What makes life so valuable is not only its brevity, but also its potential. Though it is short, though it is fragile, it is also full of opportunity. Every sunrise is a chance to live with purpose, to invest in what truly matters, to make decisions that leave a mark not just for today, but for eternity. The fact that life is fleeting should push us to treasure it even more. Instead of being careless, we should be careful. Instead of being reckless, we should be intentional. Instead of drifting through our days, we should choose to live them with meaning. The greatest tragedy is not death, but a wasted life. Death is inevitable. It comes to all people regardless of who they are, what they have achieved, or how long they have lived. No one escapes it, and in many ways it is the one reality that unites every human being. But death itself is not the ultimate loss, because death is simply the end of our earthly journey. The real tragedy, the true heartbreak, is to go through life with breath in your lungs, opportunities before you, gifts and talents within you, and yet never use them for the purpose for which you were created. That is a wasted life, and it is far more devastating than the moment of death itself. When you look around, you can see countless examples of people who have lived many years but never truly lived. They have accumulated possessions, but their hearts are empty. They have achieved success in the eyes of others, but deep within, they know they were chasing shadows. They may have lived long, but the length of life is not the measure of its value. It is not how many years you spend on this earth, but what you do with the years you are given. A short life lived with purpose is infinitely greater than a long life wasted on things that do not matter. A wasted life does not always look wasted from the outside. To others, it may seem like someone is successful, happy, and accomplished. But appearances can be deceiving. If a person spends all their days chasing wealth, power, fame, or pleasure, and never seeks to live with eternal meaning, then all those accomplishments are temporary. They fade like smoke. They vanish like mist in the morning sun. What seems like gain in the present becomes loss in the end. That is the silent tragedy of wasting your life. It often goes unnoticed until it is too late to change. The greatest tragedy is not the grave, because the grave comes to us all, but reaching that grave without ever having discovered why you were born. Too many people drift through life without direction, without focus, without vision. They let the days pass by, caught up in distractions, busy with routines, satisfied with temporary pleasures. But one day, they will look back and realize they have spent years climbing a ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. They pursued success but missed significance. They sought comfort but missed calling. They gained the world but lost their soul. That is the essence of a wasted life. When you think about it, death itself is not something to fear if life has been lived well. If you have invested your days in what matters most, if you have loved deeply, served faithfully, given generously, and pursued truth wholeheartedly, then when death comes, it is not a thief but a doorway. But if you have squandered your days, if you have filled your years with emptiness and selfish pursuits, then death is the moment when the weight of wasted time becomes undeniable. That is why wasting life is a greater tragedy than losing life. Every day is a test of how you choose to spend what you have been given. Some people waste their lives through carelessness, never taking time to think about the bigger picture. Others waste their lives through selfishness, living only for their own desires. And still others waste their lives through fear, too afraid to take risks, too hesitant to step into the purpose designed for them. Whatever the reason, the outcome is the same. A life that could have been so much more is left unfulfilled. The saddest truth is that many people do not realize they are wasting their lives until it is almost over. They look back and see opportunities they ignored, relationships they neglected, moments they let slip away, and the haunting realization that their years cannot be reclaimed. Regret becomes their companion, and the weight of what could have been presses heavily upon them. It is not death that pains them most, but the recognition that they lived without truly living. You were created with a divine purpose. From the very beginning of time, before you took your first breath, before your name was ever spoken on this earth, you were known by the one who made you. Your life is not an accident. It is not random. It is not meaningless. You were formed with intention, crafted with care, and placed in this world for a reason greater than yourself. This truth is what gives life significance. Without purpose, existence becomes empty, but with purpose, even the smallest moments can carry eternal weight. Think of how everything in creation has a purpose. The sun rises to give light and warmth, the rain falls to nourish the earth, the seasons change to sustain life. Even the smallest creatures play a role in the balance of nature. If all of creation has a purpose, how much more does your life, designed by the Creator Himself, hold meaning beyond what you can imagine? You are not here by chance, and your days are not without direction. Within you is a calling, a design, a plan that is uniquely yours, and no one else can fulfill it in the way you were meant to. The tragedy for many is not that they lack purpose, but that they never discover it. They drift through life, guided by circumstances or controlled by the expectations of others, never stopping to ask why they were placed here. They pursue careers, achievements, relationships, and possessions, but deep inside they feel something is missing. That missing piece is the awareness of their divine purpose. Until you know why you exist, everything else feels incomplete. Success without purpose is still emptiness. Recognition without meaning still leaves you longing for more. When you begin to see that you were created with a divine purpose, your perspective changes. You no longer view life as a series of random events, but as opportunities to live out your calling. You begin to see that every talent you have, every skill you develop, every opportunity placed before you is part of something bigger than yourself. You realize that the struggles you face, the setbacks you endure, and the challenges you overcome are shaping you to fulfill the very reason you were made. Even pain and loss can serve a purpose when seen through the eyes of destiny. There is freedom and strength in knowing that you are not here by accident. It means your life matters, your choices matter, your time matters. It means you have something to contribute to this world that no one else can. You may think you are ordinary, but within the plan of God, there is nothing ordinary about you. The gifts you carry, the passions you feel, the burdens you sense in your heart, they are clues to the purpose you were created for. The reason some people live without joy is because they try to fit into a mold that was never meant for them. They imitate others, chase after dreams that are not their own, and ignore the unique design they were given. Purpose gives direction. It keeps you from wasting time on what does not matter and helps you focus on what does. It gives you strength to endure hardship because you know your struggle is not in vain. It gives you clarity when faced with choices because you measure them against your calling. It gives you peace in uncertainty because you know you are guided by something greater than chance. Purpose is the anchor that holds you steady in the storms of life and the compass that points you toward significance. Your divine purpose is not just about what you achieve. It is about who you become and how you impact others. It is about using your life to serve, to uplift, to bring light into dark places. It is about living in such a way that your influence extends beyond your own years, touching lives long after you are gone. True purpose is eternal, not temporary. It is not measured by how much you accumulate, but by how much you give, not by how high you climb, but by how deeply you touch the lives of others. Would you like me to expand keynote no? 4 into 650 words now. You said keynote no. 4. Expand it into 650 words. Don't add ending sentences. Don't add any hatings, ChatGPT said. Chasing worldly things will never satisfy the soul. The human heart has an emptiness that cannot be filled with possessions, wealth, fame, or pleasure. People often spend their entire lives running after the things the world tells them will bring happiness, only to discover that once they are attained, the emptiness remains. A bigger house, a higher salary, a more prestigious title, or greater recognition might provide a momentary thrill, but it fades quickly, leaving behind the same longing that was there before. The pursuit of worldly things is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Throughout history, countless men and women have achieved the heights of success in the eyes of the world, yet admitted to feeling unfulfilled inside. Kings with kingdoms, celebrities with fame, entrepreneurs with fortunes, athletes with trophies, all confess at some point that there is still something missing. This is because material success was never meant to satisfy the soul. The soul was created for something deeper, something eternal, something that cannot be bought or earned with human effort. To chase worldly things as though they were the answer is to run endlessly on a treadmill, moving fast but never arriving anywhere. The problem with worldly pursuits is that they are temporary. Wealth can vanish in a moment through a crisis or economic collapse. Fame is fleeting. Today you are celebrated and tomorrow forgotten. Power is unstable, often slipping from one hand to another. Pleasure fades as soon as the moment passes, and it leaves a hunger for more. Everything the world offers comes with an expiration date, and if you build your life on those things, you are building on shifting sand. When the storm comes, everything collapses. The soul was never designed to be anchored in the temporary. It was designed for the eternal. Even when worldly pursuits seem to succeed, they often demand a heavy price. Families are neglected, relationships are broken, health is sacrificed, peace of mind is lost, and integrity is compromised in the name of chasing after more. People climb to the top only to realize that what they sacrificed along the way was worth far more than the prize they achieved. This is why so many who appear successful outwardly feel empty inwardly. They gained the world, but lost the very things that make life meaningful. The longing within the human soul is evidence that we were made for more than what the world can give. No amount of material comfort can quiet the inner cry for significance, peace, and love. No achievement can silence the questions of the heart about meaning and eternity. People try to fill the void with possessions, distractions, and pleasures, but the void remains because it cannot be filled by anything less than what it was created for. It is like trying to satisfy hunger by drinking water. It sustains you for a moment, but it cannot nourish. Chasing worldly things also creates an endless cycle of comparison. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone with more. No matter how much you own, there will always be something else to desire. This constant striving breeds discontentment and robs life of joy. Instead of being grateful for what we have, we become restless for what we lack. Instead of living in peace, we live in envy. The pursuit of worldly things traps people in a race with no finish line, a competition that can never be won. The soul finds its rest not in accumulation, but in connection with what is eternal. When people stop chasing the temporary and begin seeking the eternal, they discover a peace that does not fade with circumstances, a joy that does not depend on possessions, and a satisfaction that does not diminish with time. What the world promises but cannot deliver, only the eternal can provide. That is why those who continue to chase worldly things always find themselves running, always striving, always hungry, because the soul was not created to be satisfied by what fades. True fulfillment comes from living with meaning and eternal significance. Deep within every human heart is a longing for something greater than ourselves, something that lasts beyond the short span of our earthly years. This longing is not an illusion, it is a reflection of the way we were created. We were not designed to simply exist, to go through the motions of work, rest, and routine until our time runs out. We were made to live with purpose, to live in a way that impacts others, and to live with our eyes fixed on what will last forever. That is where true fulfillment is found. Many people confuse happiness with fulfillment. Happiness is fleeting, it comes and goes depending on circumstances. A good day at work, a kind word from a friend, a new purchase or achievement. These things bring happiness for a moment, but they fade quickly. Fulfillment, however, runs deeper. It is not dependent on circumstances, possessions, or recognition. It is the peace of knowing you are living in alignment with your purpose. It is the joy of knowing your life counts for something beyond yourself. It is the contentment of realizing that even the smallest act of faithfulness carries eternal weight. When you live with meaning, you begin to see your time, your talents, and your opportunities as tools to make a difference. You no longer measure your worth by how much you accumulate, but by how much you give. You no longer chase recognition, because you know that the significance of your life is not determined by applause but by impact. True fulfillment comes when you see your life as part of a bigger story, when you understand that what you do on this earth echoes into eternity. Living with eternal significance shifts your perspective on what matters. Suddenly, temporary achievements lose their grip on you and eternal values become your priority. The things that once seemed so urgent, status, wealth, competition, fade in comparison to the things that truly last, love, faithfulness, service, and truth. You begin to invest in people rather than possessions, in relationships rather than recognition, in character rather than comfort. This kind of living brings a satisfaction that cannot be stolen because it is rooted in things that cannot fade. True fulfillment also comes through serving others. There is a deep sense of joy that rises when you give of yourself, when you lift someone else, when you make a difference in another person's life. Fulfillment is not found in self-centered living, but in selfless giving. The world often teaches that fulfillment comes from taking more, gaining more, climbing higher, and protecting what is yours. But the reality is that a life lived only for yourself will always feel empty. It is when you pour yourself out for others, when you use your gifts to bless and build, that you discover the richness of a meaningful life. Even in times of struggle, living with eternal significance brings peace. When you know your life has purpose, you can endure hardship with strength because you understand that your trials are shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for something greater. Hardship is not meaningless when seen through the lens of eternity. Pain is not wasted when you know it is part of a bigger picture. Fulfillment does not mean life is easy, but it means that life is never lived in vain. Every person longs to leave a legacy, to be remembered, to know their life mattered. True fulfillment is found not in having your name etched in stone, but in leaving an imprint on hearts, in influencing lives in ways that ripple across generations. The measure of a life is not in the possessions gathered, but in the lives touched. When you live with eternal significance, you understand that your story continues long after you are gone, because what you invested in people and in eternal truths endures forever.